beautiful souls, and welcome to this episode of the Corporate Escapists TV show and podcast. I am your host, Christine Nez. I am delighted. Ros, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Lovely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I know today we're actually going to have an amazing conversation. We had a great pre-chat, and I just know we're going to bring so much amazing goodness to the show. So most people know I get a little carried away, so I'll hit pause for a moment. I'm going to bring you on, and I'm going to get you to introduce yourself to our audience, and then we're going to dive into some amazing questions today.
Wonderful.
Take it away.
All right. So, well, thanks for having me. My name's Ros Cardinal, and look, I suppose going to my business story, I've been in sort of human resources and now people and culture since the late 1980s, I think it was. So been kicking around for a while, and worked my way up to a senior role in corporate. And then I had a cancer diagnosis in 2010. And that prompted me to rethink everything. That's what cancer does for you, is you sort of rethink your whole entire life. And made a lot of decisions off the back of that. But one of them was that I needed to get out of my corporate role. There's nothing wrong with it. I liked it, paid well, was doing great work, but I just felt like I wanted something bigger, to do more, to impact more people, to help more people be successful. And so in 2012, I packed my corporate bags and headed out into the sunset to start my own business. And that was called Shaping Change. And I haven't looked back. It's been a great journey, a wonderful ride. I work with really great clients, and that's one of the things I enjoy about consulting, is that you work with such a variety of people, big organizations, small ones, little tiny not-for-profits, and so on. So it's been a lot of fun. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the fact that, sometimes we just need a moment in life to give us some clarity of sort of what we're looking for and really what happiness means to us, like what is going to light us up, because work plays such a huge important part of our life. We need to do something that makes us happy as well.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is that, for me and for lots of other people that I work with, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. It's like, work is great. It's fine. It's not awful. But you really need to be doing something in life that brings you joy. You've got to wake up in the morning and want to go to work, rather than waking up and going, oh, it's Monday again. You want to, be doing something where you go, I love what I do. I can't wait to get stuck into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that, obviously, you've been in business for quite a while now. What has been some of the changes that you've seen in the business sort of world that you've had to really adapt to, opposed from being in corporate where you've got a team sort of around you as well?
And look, that's tricky when you start out, because, like even IT, I was having a bit of a moan about my IT earlier today. When you're in corporate world, you just call somebody up and someone turns up and fixes your computer or brings you a new one or sorts out your IT issue. So there's a lot of things about business where you kind of have to get used to doing things on your own, and you're often bootstrapping it. So it's that, can't afford an IT technician, but how can I, get online or whatever it is you need to do. And look, over time, look, I think the biggest revolution that I've seen in my business life has been AI. That's been absolutely massive. That started in, I think it's late 2022, I think it was, October. It was when I first jumped onto, back then, ChatGPT version 3.5 or whatever it was. And the world of AI has just exploded. And I think that's fundamentally changing the way that we work, and I think it will into the future. Changes a lot of what I do. It's certainly an enormous help in a lot of areas. It's just about how you use it. And I think that's the big ethical dilemma we're going to have to all grapple with, is how does AI get used?
Absolutely. I love the word that you use, change. And I had a very interesting conversation the other day with a business owner, and they said, I don't like change. And it got me thinking that when you're in business, it's not that you have to like change, you just need to adapt well to change, because it's an ever-changing landscape being in business, but also you change as a person.
And look, one of the things about change is that, people will say, I don't like change, but it's actually not true. We love change as humans. That's how we adapt and we flourish. But what we don't like is change that's imposed upon us. And what that's related to is losing something. We don't like losing something. So we don't like losing our sense of security or our sense of who we are, or, our routine, or, if we leave, say, for example, if we leave workplace to start a business, we lose our work family. We lose, all the things that are attached to that. So it's not that we don't like change, we don't like losing something. And that's something I think that's really key for people to understand, is that we love change as long as we've instigated it into something we want. Because if we didn't love change, you'd never get a haircut, you'd never buy new clothes, you'd never buy a car, you'd never move house, you'd never have kids, all those things that are big things in your life. You wouldn't do them if you didn't like change. So we do. It's just reframing that. It's about, thinking about, if I'm feeling uncomfortable about this, what is it I'm losing that's making me feel uncomfortable?
Yes. And I mean, it is, I found, obviously on the journey of it, and I'd love to know your experience of obviously going from, a high profile corporate career to starting your business. You also tend to lose that corporate identity and then start to find your own identity as well.
And that can be a tricky transition for a lot of people. And it's actually, I was having a great conversation with somebody about this just recently, and she had not long ago been made redundant from her corporate job and, turned consultant, hung up a shingle. And she said, I'm really discouraged by the fact that when I first said I was going into business and announced it all, I had floods of people on my Facebook feed and LinkedIn saying, congratulations, that's amazing. We're so happy for you, go you. And she said, it's not translated into any work. And it's that thing of, it's a big shock, because you go from being somebody who people know, you've got that, like you said, that corporate reputation attached to it, to being you on your own without that sort of backing. And I think that's why, it's really important. It's something that I did back at the beginning, is when I decided to leave, and then when I actually left, we're about 18 months apart. And I spent that 18 months really working on building my personal brand, so that when I left the business, it wasn't sort of attached to my work that I'd done there. And I think that's something it's critical for business owners to really think about before you take the big leap, is really think about, how much credibility do I have outside of my existing corporate or government role?
Yeah, I love that. I think that there's a missing link. We sort of go, there's our corporate title that we've had for how many years. Then we jump straight into business, and we might be going under a business name. But in essence, the business is you, your corporate title is you, because it's your strengths, it's, your character of what you've actually been able to bring to each role as well.
Mm. Yeah. And so it's not an easy thing to do, to sort of detach that. But what I did was I lent more into networking. I spent a lot of time connecting with people, going to conferences, speaking, that kind of thing. And I also started to sow the seed with people, because I knew from, it wasn't a secret in the organisation I was in. People knew, sorry, excuse me, I've got a little tickly throat at the moment. People knew that I was considering leaving. And I started to sow the seeds with people that I knew on my network. And I said, look, I'm thinking of going out on my own. It's probably going to be a year or so off, but, let's actually just start having a conversation. So I had stuff lined up. So when I actually left, I started my first consulting gig the day after. And that really helped too, because it's a pretty lonely place when you leave. And I know of lots of people who leave, and they, they get themselves an office and they get all set up, and then nothing happens, and it can be very, very discouraging.
Yeah. I know obviously you're coming from the HR sort of background with it, and when we're bringing people into culture, but then also when you're bringing yourself into a business, how important is it to actually get to know who you are?
That's really critical, because some of the biggest challenges that happen inside organizations are around clashes of values and clashes of culture. And when I talk to people who are really unhappy at work, a lot of it is about the culture. And it's that sense of, I didn't really think about how I would fit into this workplace. And I didn't think about, like, I thought I was really adaptable, and whatever workplace I'd end up in would be something I'd just fit in with. But I've come to realize that this place is fundamentally wrong for me. And so I think knowing yourself really well and being clear about who you are and your values and what you stand for, and so on, when you start looking for jobs, or when you start to look at any kind of change of career, is really looking at, the place that I go to needs to be a really good fit for me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of like personality quizzes. There's a lot of, tools out there. And I really want to dive into this with you because I know the fact that we can get confused by all the different things out there. So I'd love to know, I know what you've created and, you're bringing to the world. Let's talk a little bit about that because I think as people, like, we want to get to know each other, but also too, when you start working with other businesses and you're bringing on board, whether it is outsourcing some work, bringing them on just for a particular project, or you're actually hiring like your talent, your team as well. I think it's really important to actually get to know them as well, make sure they're a good fit.
Yeah. And look, you're right. There are a lot of instruments out there, and I'm personally accredited in over 25 of them because I'm a diagnostic nerd,
I love it.
self-confessed.
I love it.
It's like, give me another diagnostic. Yeah. So look, and that came out of a very deep interest for me in understanding how people tick. And there's some very good instruments out there, and there's some not so good instruments. But one of the key things about it, and I'll talk a little bit about what I've developed, but one of the key things about it is making sure that whatever it is that you decide to use is fit for purpose. So, for example, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is a very popular one. It's losing popularity now, but it certainly was for decades, and I'm accredited in it. But it gets used for recruitment, which is not what it was designed for. So it's one of those things where it measures preference, not skill. So you can have a preference for something but not be any good at it. So using it to select people into a team or onto a project or whatever, it's not actually suited for that. So you've got to be kind of careful with diagnostic tools that they're used for the right purpose. And part of the work that I sort of evolved into was around it's 2016 when I started to become curious about leadership in general. I mean, I always was curious about leadership, but this idea of, women's and men's leadership being different. And all the leadership diagnostics that I was accredited in and still am, there was nothing in there that was designed specifically for women. And then when I thought about benchmarking and the way that, we benchmark leaders against other leaders, the predominant database of other leaders is men because there's more of them in leadership positions. And so you have women who are being benchmarked against male construct behaviours and being told that that's what good leadership looks like, is you've got to do these things because we've measured leaders and we know that this is what our best leaders do, our best male leaders. And so I started to explore is there something out there that can really sort of start to define what female leadership looks like? And in the search for that, I started off with initial group of about 500. It was 538 women from around the world, which was just phenomenal. And I just put something out on LinkedIn and sort of connected with people and said, anyone who might be interested in helping me with this? And I just got so many women who just contacted me and said, I want to tell you my story. And some of them were amazing stories of, wonderful things that had happened. And some of them were really sad stories about, I've really been driven out of the workplace. I got to the point where I had a breakdown and I had to leave work. But all of those stories kind of pulled together into this model that I ended up creating and testing with this initial focus group. And it's gone on to become an assessment tool. And we've had over 10,000 women take the assessment now, which is amazing. So I've got some wonderful benchmarking that I'm able to do now and benchmarking women against women. So when we look at female leadership and we look at how you compare, we're comparing you with other female leaders, not leadership in general. So it's been a journey. I'm loving it. It's been a lot of fun. I've connected with so many amazing people. And, I'm pretty sure I told you this story when we had our initial conversation, but, one of the ones that stands out for me was a woman in the United States who's started off as needing to make some extra money. And so she started growing cockroaches in her garage, on purpose, not by mistake. She didn't sort of catch cockroaches and put them in a box. She bought cockroaches and started a cockroach farm. And she started supplying cockroaches to the reptile trade because there's a lot of people in the United States who have lizards as pets and they eat cockroaches. And so she started this cottage industry. And as her orders started to grow and she outgrew her garage, what she started doing was connecting with other women, single mums, women in lower socioeconomic areas, and connecting them up with a cockroach growing kit, which is, I think, just a plastic tub and you get a matchbox full of cockroaches and you let them go and away you go. And now she's got this huge network with the largest supplier of cockroaches to the reptile trade in the United States. And she's created these businesses where other women have been able to get out of difficult financial circumstances because of the support she's given them, which is just absolutely phenomenal.
I love that story so much. I literally have goosebumps right now from
Yeah.
it, because, and I remember you sharing that with me, and I think, there's an essence that a woman can, bring to a community, and there's the empathy, there's the
Mm.
support, with it. And, I shared a little bit about my story. I remember back in the corporate days that there might be one or two female, like
Mm.
in that management roles. But it was mainly male dominated, and it was very hard to speak up in
Mm.
those roles because you were dominated by it. So it has been quite, confronting, and I've been in those situations as well. And I think what you're bringing, and we can benchmark, in a way that we can bring that feminine side of
Mm.
leadership back into what is really needed, because everyone goes through stuff in life.
Mm.
We can't just
And
be blanket from it all.
yeah, and what you find is that it's not true for every woman. I mean, what I talk about is not true for every woman, and it's also not true for
Yeah.
every man. But you get women, and certainly this has been my experience coaching and mentoring women, is they get to a senior role and they either become, such a role model, that male masculine style of leadership, which is very, it's structured, it's command, it's very
Mm.
strengths driven. And then they become they get labeled, they get told they're too loud, they're too opinionated, they're too bitchy, they're too bossy, they're too whatever. No matter what they do, they can't win at that role because they're seen as too much, taking up too much space.
Yes.
Or they become quite submissive and they take that sort of role of, I'm on the exec team, but I'm the one who makes all the coffee, or I take the lunch orders when it's time for the lunch at the board meeting, that kind of thing. And this model was about women finding their true power and being able to own that in a way that's really authentic to women. It doesn't get
Mm.
them labeled, and it also enables them to be heard, to be visible, and to hold that place at the table in a really genuine, authentic,
Yeah.
powerful way without being seen as too much.
Yes. Have you also experienced, and when we're in those roles and we're not showing up authentically, because it is that very masculine role, and that's maybe what we've thought that we needed to do, is sometimes it's actually very hard to switch over to actually then, when you do start showing up authentically as yourself,
Mm.
it's almost like changing the different labels or wearing the different hats, and there is like a transition that you need to go through.
It's changing the habit,
Yeah.
absolutely. And people can find it very weird when you do it too. It's like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? And look, getting back to the male role models, a lot of us grew up in leadership. When I look back to my early leadership days back in
Mm.
the 80s and 90s, we only had men as bosses. And
Yeah.
we all had the sort of baby boomer bosses who were, show up to work on time. We had back in the day, sort of punch cards and things like that, clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah.
And that's what we thought leadership looked like, because that was the only role model we had. I
Yeah.
didn't have a woman as a boss for, probably 10 years after I started work. And I look back on my own leadership and, I was being rewarded for results because I was getting things done, and I'd be put in to fix an underperforming team, and I'd do that. But I look back on it now and I'm quite ashamed of the way that I behaved, because I was pretty toxic. I was
Mm.
very pushy. I was very do this, do that, get on with it, no space for compassion or empathy. And looking back on that, I look on, I kind of cringe. I'm like, I can't believe I was like that. But I had no other role model, but they rewarded me for it. So it was actually, I was getting something from it. I was getting promoted. I was getting the accolades.
Mm.
And it certainly wasn't healthy, and it certainly wasn't helpful.
Yeah, they're feeding
Mm.
what they wanted, pretty much, opposed to what is
Mm.
best for us. Where, like right now, when you're working with, the women who are, in that leadership role, what are some of the things that they're finding that they're struggling with, either within themselves or in the workplace?
The Look, there's a few things. The one of the key things is this glass ceiling that still exists. But I do find that a lot of women are getting to the glass ceiling and they're looking through it and going, I actually don't want to be in that world. Like
Mm.
they'll say to me, my next role will be direct report to the CEO. It'll be chief operations officer or chief marketing officer or whatever. But I look at the way that they behave together and I don't want to be there. I don't want to have to work 80-hour weeks. I don't want to have to sacrifice my family life. I don't want to have to learn how to play golf so I can be on the golf course where the decisions get made. And so they're opting out. They're kind of, the glass ceiling is something that it's not just about breaking through it. It's about what's on the other side. Do we actually even want that?
Mm.
And then there's the confidence and sense of value piece, which is, and we know this from research, that it's that old thing of women won't apply for a job unless they feel 120% qualified, and a man will throw his hat in the ring when he's got about 60% of it. And so women second guess themselves a lot, and they feel, it's almost like the feeling of unworthy. Like someone to say, you should totally apply for that CEO role in that not-for-profit. I think you'd be amazing at it. And the woman looks at it and goes, no, I'm not sure if I could do that. And so there's a big piece in there about self-belief and self-worth, but then there's also this structural systemic piece about, do we really want what's on the other side of the glass ceiling?
Mm. Yeah. And also trying to see how, if you did get to those high positions, how you can influence change as well. I think we've got the ability to be able to do it, but also how do we do it? It's not so much of if we know it needs to happen, but how could we actually do it?
Yeah. And look, I think it's one of the challenges is that women who get to very senior roles are often the only woman on that executive team. And being the only woman can be pretty challenging because one of the things that we find works really well for women and look, it's a classic thing where women tell me this quite a lot, and it's something that's I've obviously read a lot about, is women will put forward an idea and it'll kind of get skipped over. And then 5 minutes later, one of the men at the table will say the same thing, and everyone says, that's an amazing idea, let's pick it up and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's less likely to happen to a woman if there's another woman in the room, because quite often the other woman will say something, say, hang on a minute, I thought that Jane said that. And so there's a lot of sort of solidarity in having more than one woman on the team. But if you're the only one, it can actually be quite isolating. And look, I worked with somebody who was a very senior woman who was the first woman ever to have been appointed to that position. And she said exactly that would happen. She'd put forward a suggestion and nobody'd listen to it. And 5 minutes later, a colleague would say it, and she said, it's the greatest idea since sliced bread, And so I worked with her on little techniques like being able to say, Bob, thanks for building on my idea. It's great we're on the same page. Why don't we get together offline and we'll flesh this out properly? So it's ways of doing it in a way that doesn't make you feel that you're being confrontational, doesn't make you feel like you've lost your power in that situation, but a way of actually being really clean and clear about what it is.
Yeah, I love that. I might have to steal that. I'll go back and watch this
Steal
again.
it,
Yeah, and
by all
I'll
means.
like use it so many times. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
When
Everyone should have that in their back pocket, I think, when that
they
happens.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah, somebody said to me, you need to hang around me, Christine, because I'm the comeback queen. And I'm like going, oh, maybe I need to, because I just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
With it. With like obviously your business, who is your ideal type of client that you like? I mean, I know I do, and I get so excited, like, oh my God, they're here, with it. Who is your ideal type of a client?
Well, I've actually got almost two businesses now. So there's my consulting business, consulting and coaching. And look, my ideal client for that depends what I'm doing. Consulting clients, one I'm working with at the moment, which is just delightful, is they need to do some OD project work and no one's got capacity for it. So they've kind of come to me and gone, hey, can you build us a leadership capability framework? Can you build us a leadership program? And that's right up my alley. Coaching client-wise, I love working with people who are trying to find themselves, whatever that looks like. So they've come to me because they're maybe a new leader and they're like, I really don't know what leadership's supposed to look like. And it's my first leader role and I've got nothing. Or someone who says, it's not that I hate my job. My job's fine, but I just feel like I want to do something different. What does that look like? So I love that sort of coaching people through that transition period of moving from one to another, whatever that looks like. And then there's my kind of second business, which is ramping up now, which is the accreditation program for my model. And that's my ideal client for that. The kind of people I really want to be working with in that space are women who are doing the same kind of coaching that I'm doing. They're coaching other women, they're supporting them, confidence coaches, career coaches, leadership coaches, and so on. And women who want to make a difference, who want to take this work and run with it and create a ripple effect.
Yeah. I love it so much, and I can totally see like the complete crossover with it, but it's really giving them the tools to empower themselves to make the decisions that's going to best serve them, but also to, I think what you do is also allow a ripple effect, because when they see other people standing in that power, doing the leadership with, like that grace, the feminism of them and selves, other people start to go, oh, I like that. I think I can
Yeah.
do that. I want to, take on board what they've been taught by you, and then they can follow it on as well.
Yeah. And look, for me, the shift happened for me about this a year or so ago when I sat down with my financial advisor and he said, so we need to start talking about retirement and super and things like that. And I had that moment of, retirement. And I realized it's, I'll keep working and I'll keep working, well
Mm.
past retirement age. I probably won't be full time, but I'll be doing something.
Yeah.
And I realized that when I stop, the work stops. And because I've got this wonderful database of more than 10,000 women now, and I've got the women who contributed to the original research, I owe it to them to keep this going. If I kind
Mm.
of retire, say I retired in 5 or 6 years and I just closed the doors and went, that's it, we're done, and shut everything down. Um, it's almost like I'm disrespecting that legacy from the women who've
Mm.
contributed to the work.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all about legacy. I
Mm.
feel like every single one of us has a piece to leave, for generations to come. And
Mm.
literally what you're doing is creating a legacy, not
Mm.
only for people who are in leadership, but for other coaches who can learn from you to be able to take that on board and
Mm.
to continue with the research and continue with helping other people as well.
Yeah. And look, I read a really depressing stat a little while ago about how long it was going to take for us to achieve equal pay. And I think it was 100 years, like we'll be on Mars before we achieve equal pay for women. And it was kind of discouraging. Then, it's like if we don't keep working towards it, it's
Mm,
never going to happen.
yeah,
And I had that
absolutely.
moment of, I'd love to have seen that in my lifetime, but realistically, it's not going to happen. But
Yeah.
it'll happen in the future it'll happen for my grandchildren and their children.
Yes, yes, definitely. And just having somebody like you, sharing your story, sharing your why, sharing what you're passionate about. I know that this is, I feel honored that we get the opportunity to be able to help share that with that audience as well, to carry through. I'd love for you to share, one thing that you've learned from being in business, and that you could, give advice to anybody who's looking at starting a business.
For me, I think one of the most important things, and I do this with people who their transition is going to be into business. So they've said to me, I'm done with corporate, I want to get out, is spend some time really doing your market research first. Like figure out if there is actually a space for you in the market, because
Mm,
lots of people end up with something that just becomes a very expensive hobby. It's got to be something you love, something that you're really good at, but also something people are prepared to pay you for.
yeah.
And that was what I did in that sort of 18-month period between making the decision and leaving. Was I really went, so who else is doing consulting in the organisational development HR space? Who are the key players? How much work are they getting? What kind of, and I mean, I'd engaged some of them myself in my job. So I kind of had a bit of a feel for what the market was doing.
Mm,
And it doesn't necessarily need to be that you look at big competitors and go, there's too many people, I can't play. Maybe there's a niche for you where there's a gap between, you got, company A doing this, company B doing that. Maybe there's a space in the middle for you. But it's just getting really clear about your market research and making sure there is going to be something out there when you leave,
yeah.
because a lot of people do take the plunge and they leave work with a year's worth of salary stacked up behind them, ready to go, and they get out there and hang up the shingle and then nothing happens. So
Yeah.
it's get really clear who it is you serve, what it is you do, start to really think about how you position that for people, get your elevator pitch sorted, start making connections, start the work before you leap.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea. I think, most people, we're told like to jump in. I mean,
Mm.
I'd already left corporate when I started my job, but it was, I call it my not so gracious exit from corporate. So it wasn't never planned. But, I think a lot of things, like there's a lot of learnings, and I think
Mm.
there's no shame in you going either part-time and
Mm.
having your business run side by side, because yeah, you learn lots of different things. You learn the systems, the
Mm.
processes. Networking is essential, I think, for every business owner as well.
Mm.
You've got to put
Yeah.
yourself out there.
And I did that for a bit too. I mean, I coached off the side of my desk as a side gig while I was doing the work through the exit plan, because I wanted to check and see that there was, clients out there. So I just kind of went, okay, I'm
Mm,
going to do a bit of coaching and see how that goes. And it worked well.
yeah.
And look, when I work with people who are exiting, it usually is a kind of 18-month trajectory out to the whatever it is they want to do, get everything sorted. And for some people, they need to go and do some qualifications. I'm working with someone at the moment who is going to be doing art therapy, and she's doing an art therapist. I'm not sure if it's a diploma or a degree or something, but she's doing that at the moment. And that's her getting her ducks in a row before she quits her job, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love everything that you're doing. We're going to pop all the links below for people. I've got a couple of quick little questions that I would love to ask you. They're sort of our quick little fact-finding questions that we're asking our guests as well. What has been one of the biggest challenges that you have faced with starting the business?
Look, I think it's the fear. It really is that fear of what if it all goes wrong.
Yeah.
I remember when I was leaving, after I'd announced my exit, people were all coming up and congratulating me and saying, it's going to be great, you're going to be amazing, all of these sorts of things. But it was that fear of what if I get it wrong? What if this completely fails?
Yeah.
And I talked to a woman that I've known for a long time who does similar work to me. And she kind of just looked at me and she went, well, if it doesn't work, just get another job. And I went, yeah, it really is that simple.
Yeah.
So it's that the big hurdle, I think, when I really think back on it, was that fear. That is particularly on the last day when I wrapped it up and I got in the car and drove home for the last time and kind of went, this is it. I'm on my own now.
Yep.
Half sort of excitement and the other half really kind of like, oh my God, what have I done?
Exactly.
It's like,
I totally understand that. I'm going through that right at the moment. So yeah, I totally understand it. What has been one of the biggest rewards that you've had from going into business for yourself?
Look, I love the flexibility. I love the fact that my husband and I have been able to take, 6 to 8 weeks off every year and go overseas and see some amazing things and have some wonderful adventures. I love that I can work 4 days a week now, so I can look after my twin grandsons 1 day a week. It's the flexibility, but it's also the variety of clients. Everybody you meet is a different story, a different challenge, a different interesting thing to work on. And I particularly love, and a lot of people who exit corporate would agree with me on this, is that when you're internal, you spend a lot of time negotiating to do the work. Like, you've got to get everyone on board, all the stakeholders lined up and the budget approved and blah, 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 before you can actually do anything. Whereas when you're a consultant, people come to you because they've already decided they want to do the work and the budget's there. So you skip all of that 6 months worth of pain that you often go through before you can actually start working. So you can just get straight into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really it's such a key point for people as well, because when most people jump on a discovery call with you, they've already got an inkling of whether or not they want to work with you. So yeah, with it. I celebrate my clients, and I feel that a lot of the times as business owners, we forget to celebrate wins, whether big or small. What is something that you haven't celebrated as a win that you've had for yourself or your business?
Oh, it's a great question. It actually brings me back to just realizing that I haven't celebrated the fact that we've managed to successfully launch the accriteration program for the archetypes. It's just
Well
like
done.
haven't celebrated that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been so busy doing the work. I haven't lifted my head
Yes.
up and gone, so thank you.
No, my pleasure. I think it's really important. I totally understand. We forget to celebrate, just the tiny little wins that we have, and something such as, significant as what you have. One other question I love asking is that, with the goal that you've got in the next 30 days, how can we help and support you?
Well, look, I guess my key goal at the moment is getting the next round of accreditation off the ground, which starts on the 19th of August, and then there'll be another one after that. So filling the accreditation program with people who really want to support women, who love working with them, who want to add value to the world and think that this could be a really great addition to their toolkit. I'd love to talk to people like that.
Amazing. And we're going to do exactly that. We're going to drop all the links below so how people can reach out to you if they're in a coaching environment, they want to add an additional tool, or they're looking at expanding their business. I highly recommend they come and have a chat with you as well. But I want to say thank you so much for being here and for sharing your gifts with us. And I know that we're going to get you back again, because we're going to dive into just a little bit more juicy conversation with people as well, which I'm excited about.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. We've got 5 quick questions that we're going to ask you. It's a bonus lightning round. So the first question is, in the morning, are you a tea or a coffee drinker?
Neither, unfortunately, because very sadly, I've been diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome. And one of the things
Mm.
that sets me off is caffeine.
Oh
It's
no.
caffeine and red wine. It's the saddest thing
Oh,
ever.
that's very sad.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness. My two loves.
I know. So I was a
So
big coffee. I was look, coffee or tea when I was drinking it. I could do
yeah,
either. I don't mind a really nice cup of coffee in the morning, but I drink
yeah,
tea during the day. But
yeah.
it's all past tense now, sadly. So I'm on my herbal teas.
Oh, okay. Okay. At least
Not quite the
herbal,
same.
yeah, they're not quite the same, but a herbal tea is actually not too bad.
Yeah.
Um, if you had some spare time, would you prefer to curl up and watch a movie or to read a book?
Read a book. I'm a big book person.
Is it Kindle or is it a physical book?
Look, it's both, but I'm tipping more towards Kindle these days just because my eyesight's not as great as it used to be. And I find with the book, I have
Yeah.
to sit in really good light. So
Yes.
I can't do that curl up in the corner and read. I've
Yeah.
got to be in
I'm
the
like
sunlight.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
You
like this.
get the
Yeah.
angle right. Whereas Kindle's backlit and you can make the writing
Yeah.
bigger. So it's one of those sad things about getting older is you have to revert to,
Oh,
slightly
yeah.
easier forms of reading.
Oh, I understand. I completely understand. The next question I have is that if you were to go to your dream destination, would you prefer to travel by plane or by boat?
If I had all the time in the world, I would love to do a boat. I sort of remember my parents telling me about how they actually met on a boat coming from Australia, from England to
Oh,
Australia. So my mum's parents were diplomats and they'd been posted to Australia. And my dad,
wow.
his family had left India. They were actually British Indians, so Anglo-Indian, and they'd left
Wow.
after the revolution. And I don't know why my dad was in England, but he was in England. And they were traveling back to Australia on a boat, and that's how my parents met. So I've always had this idea of like boat travel. That sort of the old days of the steamers.
Yes.
It'd be so cool.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're hosting a dinner party and you're allowed to invite one special guest from either the past or for like the current, who would that be?
Oh, that's an amazing question. There's so many. You know what? I reckon I'd invite Richard Branson because I'd love to pick his brain on all things business. I'd
Yes.
just love to know what makes that guy tick.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Going to Necker Island is actually on my vision. Like it's there going, oh, that would be
I
amazing.
I had the opportunity to go and I didn't.
Oh,
So it was back when I was first in business and I was involved in a business group. I think it might have been Business Chicks or something like that, but they were doing a Necker Island Richard Branson thing and it was
mm,
$30,000 US. And at the time, I kind of, we would have had to draw down on the mortgage to do it. And my husband and I kicked it around and I almost did it. And then at the last minute, I kind of went, you know what, I just don't think I can justify the money.
yeah.
And then, of course, the Australian dollar, which was dollar for dollar back then, just got worse and worse. And I've looked at it now, and it's kind of like looking at $60,000. And yeah, so one of my regrets is I should have jumped on the Necker Island trip while I had the chance.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And if you could describe yourself in one word, what would that be?
Thoughtful.
I love that. I love it. Well, thank you again, beautiful, for being here. I just love this conversation so much. And as I said, we're going to pop all the details so that everyone can reach out to you. Thank you again for being on the show today.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. And for those who are watching at home, thank you so much. If you've liked this show, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, leave your comments below. And remember to live life to the fullest every single day. Love and light to you all.